It cocked 45, and you guessed it, the year is 1975. And look what I found, an appropriate firearm for that period. It's always appropriate. Oh no, and that's appropriate. So we used to have some trouble with them back then. Unless you did a ramp job. Now that's magazine related, I think. But yes, 1975 with a 1911. And actually that's kind of appropriate. I'm glad it malfunctioned. And I was not in an engagement when it happened, right? Other than with that target. So yes, armed in 1975. I was there. I was an old man even at that point. And some of you were not there. So I have a little more insight into 1975 maybe. So we're going to look at a choice of firearms as we do. This will be in the series, the playlist of armed ends, okay? It always involves 3 firearms, at least so far, right? A handgun, a rifle, and a shotgun of choice that you or I might have chosen had we been purchasing maybe one of each or our first firearms in 1975. Not necessarily the only choice or the best choice in your opinion or my opinion, but a viable choice, okay? A choice someone might have made in 1975, and a lot of someone's probably did, okay? In fact, I kind of fall into that category with these firearms. We'll talk about that a little bit. So that's what we're about today. What you see here, a 1911, which is pretty much like Series 70, okay? It was made in 1969, and 45 government model. Very popular for a long time, right? And then an M1 Carbine. You know, they were available on the commercial market, surplus parts, just a whole hodgepodge of possibilities. M1 Carbines. It's been a beloved firearm for a long time, right? And then, of course, a pump shotgun. This one happens to be a high standard. Yeah, one that I actually own, the K1200. You've seen it before probably, unless you're brand new around here. And this would have been a good choice and a very possible choice in 1975. So there's your 3-gun battery. You may not agree with it. It may not have been what you would have chosen, of course, or myself, but some people did, I'm sure. And before we get, so with that said, what was it like in 1975 if you were there? Share. What do you remember most about 1975? Maybe you met me. Maybe I met you and we didn't know each other. Maybe you were sitting at Shoney's in Nashville at the next table in 1975, and there I was, and you didn't even tell me that a few years later I'd be making a fool of myself in videos. Yeah, who knows? May have seen you at the mall shopping for bell-bottom jeans. So 75, but speaking of that, 1975 was an interesting year, as all years are. That was the year that Jaws was a big hit. What else? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson. You might remember that. Those of you who have a little bit of age on you remember quite well, right? Saturday Night Live debuted that year. George Carlin was the host. I think their first episode, 1975. Speaking of some of these firearms, that was the year that the Vietnam War officially ended. I think it had cranked down a little before that, but 1975, right? Big year there. And guess who was it Steve Jobs' garage, or was it Stephen Wozniak? Wozniak and Jobs. They're in, I think it was Jobs' garage, his dad's garage or whatever, working on a design for a computer. And I think they had a prototype that year, yeah. And then 6 years later, I bought one. So anyway, interesting year, a lot going on. And I was putting together my 3-gun battery. I have to confess, it was more than 3. But some of these were my choices. So anyway, let's look at what we got here. We got the 1911 government model. This would have been a good choice because by 75, you know, you do the math. It had been around a long time, had proven itself in so many theaters of war, right? From World War I right on up through Vietnam. And including World War II, Korea, and lots of other places around the globe, and that you may or may not think we should have been, but the firearm did prove itself and continues to prove itself, doesn't it, with a lot of people. And this is like the Series 70. It's a 69 model, a commercial model, and in keeping with what many of us experienced back then when we would buy one. And a lot of the problems were magazine related. I'll try it again. And with this one, I think that's the magazine came with it. That it's a Colt mag, but that's, I think, the one I have the issues with occasionally. So let's shoot it again, okay? A great choice. Why? Well, a lot of people make this choice even today, okay? And certainly in 75, you didn't have this plethora of highly reliable, higher capacity polymer pistols and things that were just not as available, right? And so you didn't have to search through the weeds as much to find a firearm like this. This was prominent if you wanted a semi-automatic pistol, right? So let's try it again. Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, just have to have a good magazine. Good old trusty 1911 was a pretty good choice in 1975 or any time through that period. In fact, it was one of my choices. I had one just like this that I bought in 70, probably 70, well, it's 72 or 3. And it was my only semi-automatic pistol that I owned in 75. So I can really relate to this. It was my home defense pistol. I had it in a closet up high. I remember on a pad, like on a towel, folded up, and just up there where only I could reach it. And I'd have to climb out of the bed to get to it, but I had it up there. Didn't have kids or anything. And that was my home defense firearm, my first line of defense, this very pistol, before I messed up and had it modified for competition and all that kind of thing a little while later. But so, viable choice, it was my choice. So, it really was. Even though I had some 44 Magnums, that was my choice. Pretty good choice. Now for a rifle, yeah, this is a good choice. I didn't have one of these in 75, but a lot of people did. Various commercial manufacturers and various folks putting them together through parts kits and just everything else. They were around. The first one I bought was a Universal. I think they made maybe more than anybody. At least maybe they did. I don't know. You might know more about that than I do. I know they made a lot of them for a period of years. And my first one was a Universal. I got it at a gun show. And it was in the 70s. I think it was in the later 70s. And I wasn't familiar with them at all, really. I just knew they were used by the military. And I think I thought the Universal was a brand name that was used in the military. I just didn't really know. But it was cool. I liked it. It didn't seem as authentic as this one. And so I traded off at some point. And very small for me, right? And I didn't know as much about the history of them to appreciate them. But viable choice, handy. Why would you choose that in the 70s? Well, how many little carbines like this? I guess you wouldn't call this necessarily a pistol caliber carbine. It's kind of an intermediate cartridge, maybe. A lot of people would argue that one way or the other. It is pretty powerful if you would consider it a pistol cartridge. I know that Ruger used to make a Blackhawk in it, I think, but you don't see many pistols chambered in it. And you can compare the ballistics. I think it gives you 357 Magnum energy at 100 yards that you get from a 357 Magnum revolver at the muzzle or something I've read and all that kind of thing. So it's not a weak sister. Sorry, was that sexist? But it's not a weak cartridge. All right, as a lot of people make it out to be. Yeah, compare with 30-06 maybe, but pretty nice and not a bad choice. How many handy little semi-automatic rifles were there in the mid-70s that were available? Not that many. It's nothing like today. Wow, I've been shooting 2 or 3 different pistol caliber carbines just this week. So let's see if it'll fire. The magazines were kind of an issue with this firearm, and I'm not sure which one of mine work well, which ones don't. All right. Nice. Let's go across the hill over there and hit a cow or a gong. Pretty nice. How about a turkey? Oh boy. And a red plate. Nice. Let's do some bowling. Sweet. Yee doggies. Let's leave that 2 liter for the shot. I'll tell you what, just a handy little rifle. Let's empty the chamber this way by firing around. How's that? So you really could do worse, couldn't you? It had the history, the panache of being a successful military firearm, and you had, at that time, 75, you still had people who, I don't know, like say they were my age at that time, had maybe been to Korea, you know, World War II vets and everything that had actually carried one in the military. So that would have, just like now, you have so many vets that, you know, come home and they get an M4 or some kind of AR. You know, they're very familiar with it, comfortable with it. So just very, very popular. That's why there's so many manufacturers of them, people putting them together, the parts kits and everything else. And I don't know that as many of the originals were out there on the CMP yet. I'm not sure what years that all took place, but they were out there. It would have been a great choice. Powerful enough, handy, lightweight, small enough that almost anybody could shoot it. I have to crunch down. It's pretty short for me, but that means even you know, anybody could use it. The people use these for deer hunting and everything else. Nice little 30 caliber carbine. So not a bad choice for 1975. Okay, and then for a shotgun, oh boy, here we go. The old high standard K1200 Riot shotgun, it's called, right? It says it right on the barrel. It's a Riot shotgun, and it has always been a riot to shoot. Been a lot of fun. This is one that I did have in 75. So 2 of these basically I had, and not the exact gun, but I had 2 of these in 75. You know, this one and the 1911. And I've talked about that before in doing the video with this. I'll link to videos on each of these. Okay, you can check them out, learn more about it. If you were so negligent that you missed the original videos on these firearms. But this is a really well-made you know, shotgun like this. It's more of a defensive shotgun. Look at the length, of course. And we're not really dealing with hunting generally in these videos, but just a defensive shotgun primarily. And this was pretty popular, high standard at the time. There were many others, but this one was very popular. It was my first one, and I had it in 75. So again, it was my choice. So if you think these choices are ridiculous, you think I'm ridiculous. Maybe some of you do. But I just felt like this one, I've talked about in the video with it, how after seeing The Getaway with Steve McQueen and Allie McGraw, I didn't have a shotgun like this. Maybe I didn't even have a shotgun, I guess. Yeah, I got to have one of those. I've got to have some double-aught buck, because I saw what it did to that car. Okay, so this one being recommended by the noted firearms expert, gun writer Steve McQueen, I just took his recommendation and I bought one. Can I shoot it? Yeah, pretty nice. Talk about a nice all-around gun. Again, not really a hunting shotgun when you get into this length, although you could. No laws against it, I guess. Most of the hunting game laws have to do with capacity. I don't know that they really deal with barrel length, you know, unless you get below like legal length even. That requires a stamp or something. But this is just a nice, well-made shotgun. You've seen what it'll do to the hood of a car, if you've seen that movie, right? And you know what it'll do to a 2 liter. See? Now I gotta not hit that bowling pin. Boom! You don't want to shoot bowling pins. I keep reiterating that with buckshot. Let's finish off that thing. Let's finish off the cowboy. Yeah. Good old shotgun. It's hard to beat. Really a pump shotgun. And one like this in this length for having fun with, for a defensive shotgun, tree trimming. I use these for everything. And again, where I don't hunt, the barrel length is not a big issue for me. It would be for some of you. And I think, if I remember correctly, this one didn't have interchangeable barrels. That's one reason, as I recall, for its demise, because the Winchesters and some others continued on in production because you could put in a longer barrel used for bird hunting or whatever. I think these did not have that. Like it says, it's a riot shotgun. So they didn't offer this, I think, in a 30-inch barrel. But this would have been a good choice. Patting myself on the back because it was my choice, right? So a good old pump shotgun of any kind would be a good choice. And these have a reputation for being well made. They really do. So armed in 1975, you couldn't have done a whole lot better, I don't think. AR-15s, you would see them. I would see them in gun shops occasionally, but you know, unless you were a vet, you'd been to Vietnam or you'd been in the military, they were a very strange animal at that time. I know it's hard to picture them that way. The very same firearms that I picked up I remember Battleground Armory, Franklin, Tennessee, in the basement, had all the long guns. I remember picking one up a couple of times. And wow, this is what the military uses. This is wild. This is not full auto, is it? You know, and I look at the controls and everything. I remember that was the first time I had handled one, and that would have been in like '73 probably. And I thought, wow, just awkward feeling, and it just was odd. It's hard to imagine these days. We all know how ergonomic an AR-15 is, don't we? But at the time, they were almost a turnoff to the average shooter. I think they really were. I didn't know anybody that had one. You know, there was like one in that basement, and it wasn't usually there, and there's a whole room full of firearms. So just trying to put you in context. And then even upstairs at the main part of that gun shop, there were a lot of shells, and you had like Browning high powers and Smith & Wesson Model 59, I think, you know, and then a lot of revolvers, you know, Smith & Wesson Model 39 was. They were really, you could count them on one hand or two hands. A lot of the models that were just so popular that people used and carried. Nothing like today. Nothing like the choices we have today. Okay, so just again to put that in context. But I think these are pretty good ones. A good old 45 government model, generally pretty reliable, especially with hardball, as long as your magazine spring is strong and you don't have any issues with that. Okay, and your ramp might need to be polished. And then of course an M1 Carbine and 30 caliber. You know, hard to beat for most applications. You just can't beat a good old shotgun, slugs, bird shot, double-aught buck, whatever you want to shoot at. Okay, so in my opinion, you would have been pretty well armed in the 70s with these three firearms, and you would have been able to have a lot of fun at the range with these three firearms. Some of you, if you were there in 1975, what did you have? What were your choices? And did you have any of these? And for those who were not there, you were just a baby, or your parents were just barely born, or whatever, try to take yourself back into time, into the 70s, where we didn't spend all of our time texting each other, okay, or hanging out online. What might you have chosen? What might you have chosen that was actually available at the time? If you could only afford three firearms, one pistol, rifle, and a handgun, well, pistol, rifle, shotgun, what do you think you might have chosen? Okay, you might have been there and you still have them. You really might. So anyway, it's always fun to kind of think about these time periods, and this one's fun for me because I was there, and that's when I was really into shooting for the first few years and getting into it and making choices like that. And I made some pretty good choices. You see them on the table. Life is good.
Oh yeah, that's better. This is a great gun for defense. Oh hey, didn't see you guys there. While I've got you here, I want to remind you of our friends over at Talon Grips and Ballistol. Talon Grips makes grips, can you believe it, for all different types of firearms. You can get rough texture or more of a rubberized texture. It just sticks right on there. You know, really affordable, really cool option to improve the grip for your handguns or rifles. So please check them out at talongungrips.com. You'll be glad you did. And also Ballistol. Dad has been using Ballistol for many years. It's a cleaner and a lubricant, and it's non-toxic. It works really great, and we're happy to have them on board since it's been a part of our shooting endeavor for a very long time. So go to ballistall.com, talongungrips.com, and also while you're out there, I'm juggling all these things here. Also, while you're on the internet, please do check out our other social media like Hickok 45 on Facebook. There's also Hickok 45 on Twitter, The Real Hickok 45 on Instagram. There's a John_Hickok 45 on Instagram where I do some things. There's hickok45.com. You can find us also on Gunstreamer. So check out all that stuff and then watch more videos.